Hey, this is Kiz. I'm repping Go With The Flow podcast by Hip Hop Heals UK. And today's guest is a local lad from Birmingham, where I'm based. And he is a complete legend, a guide, a mentor to many, somebody who's led the way in terms of reggae, somebody who's led the way in terms of community, somebody's led the way in terms of therapeutic drumming in the local scene and beyond. So he's a stalwart of the reggae scene, and he's part of a number of crews that do sound system and run reggae dances. And I'm very pleased to announce we've got Mr. Bongo Damo with us back once again.
Hello, nice to see you.
Damo, tell us what you do.
Well, there's a few things that I do. I'm generally a musician, but I'm also a workshop leader. So in terms of the stuff that we're talking about today, African drumming workshops, I've been doing a lot of over the past 10, 15 years, something like that, I think. And yeah, it seems to have a positive effect on everybody that does it, really. So I'm quite fortunate in that it's quite of a universal sort of, there's universal benefits to it, seemingly. So from the very young to the very old, and people with various situations that they're in along the way, you know. So yeah, African drumming workshops for people who don't really play the drums either. That's really the key to it. For what I do as well, is trying to introduce people to this sort of thing. And drums are good for that, because you don't have to learn a load of stuff to kind of get involved in the first place. Someone that's never played anything before, within half an hour, I can get us all playing music, you know. So that's one of the really good benefits of it, really, is that you don't need any prior experience or any information before you start the session at all, you know. So that's good.
It's easy, isn't it? It's really, it's something that you want to get involved with. When you start drumming, people in the workshop want to copy and join in. It's real fun. I've been there, done it with you. Mm-hmm. We've been into homeless hostels and worked with the community locally with Ben Rafiki.
That's right. Yeah. We had great sessions.
We had a wicked time. Yeah, we had a wicked time. How did you come to this work, Damon?
I started off I used to teach at South Birmingham College, which is now Southern City College, and I was teaching world music and a few other things there. And from being a drummer, I wanted a way of being able to do workshops using the drums, and then I came across the African drums and realised that this was something that anyone could take part in, and really all I needed to do was collect the equipment and get into the drumming myself. And then I just took it from there, really. It was kind of, it took me a few years to get the gear together, to be honest with you, because they're not cheap. So I had to get enough equipment for 10 to 15 people. So I've now got 10 djembe drums, 2 dun-duns, as well as bells and shakers and stuff. So once I'd collected all that, then I was able to start doing my own workshops. And obviously I had to kind of, initially I just bought myself a djembe in the first place, which would have been about 20 years ago now, because drum kit's my first my first instrument. Do you know what I mean? So I just got into it from that, and I loved it. And I just thought, you know what, this is something that would be great for a group setting. That is one of the benefits of drumming, isn't it? Is it does allow that. I know, and that's definitely something that's kept me on the straight and narrow. Definitely, because you can just take all that energy that's going on inside you and put it into something kind of positive, really, rather than that's the thing. I think
there must be something. Yeah, there must be something in that, because it always seems to me like the drummers in a band are, for me, always the coolest people. So this is a podcast about therapeutic hip hop. So how do you know when you're doing a workshop that a good therapeutic workshop has happened? So what are the indicators?
Right.
Well, not thinking about like an arts workshop, actually a well-being kind of.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is the engagement during the workshop is the key to it, really. I think if everybody gives it enough time to get engaged to it, then that's a good indication that they're, because especially when you're dealing with, people that are not necessarily the most stable at all, And so if they actually engage for something over a 20-minute, half an hour period without any kind of distraction, then that's telling you, okay, well, you've got their attention, and that they're actually doing it. And I don't doubt, you see, because I've been doing it that long now, that it's kind of like, I don't doubt that if people give it a go, then they will get something from it, So if they are actually engaging and they're playing, and we're making what's vaguely described as music, then it's a good start, And then what I have to do with the ones I'm doing at the moment, like currently I'm doing some over 50s workshops in Yard. I'll be going there later to do something. And that's a funded thing, which is great. So it means people can come for free. And I just sign people up to a 10-week course and we do it. But with that, I have to evaluate it all quite clinically to prove to the funders that there's something going on that is it's beneficial to everybody. And so it's
amazing.
So it's, if people engage, and then I'll chat to them afterwards about how they felt it went, and whether or not they got something from it. And generally, it's, if you've not done it before, it's always a surprising thing, because you just think, oh, what's this? Oh, well, I'll give it a go, And then when you think, oh, actually, most people think, I can't do it. I can't drum. I've got no rhythm. They say this sort of stuff. I've got no rhythm. I can't do it. I've never done it before. Why would I be able to do it now? Especially, I'm dealing with people over 50. So they've lived a lot of their lives already, and they're suddenly going, oh, that's, But it tends to be the women, actually, that seem to open themselves up to it more, I think. Generally, over the years, I'd say I've had way more women people, women, girls, older women.
Women people.
Women people, you know those ones.
Woman
person.
woman person, she come, she drum.
But I think perhaps it's something to do with boys feeling a bit more like, oh, I don't want to be made to feel like a fool. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm not in control of it, or I don't want to seem a little bit out of my depth. And women are a bit more like, I don't care. I just want to have a go at something. I've always fancied having a go at that. Now I'm going to give it a go, Maybe there's, I don't know. But it's certainly the case that more women have been involved than blokes, definitely. It's not exclusively
like a vulnerability
women.
factor as well.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a funny one, especially because obviously I would do it if I wasn't doing this. It'd be something I would do, because I'm up for that sort of thing. I think it's just putting yourself in a scenario where you may seem a little bit out of your depth, and you perhaps don't want to, let people see you struggling with something. Do you know what I mean? A little bit.
There's also something in that, what I've noticed doing elderly workshops or people with an age past 50, seeming age appropriate when you're looking at a little kid, a toddler, and they've got their xylophone and their drum and they're banging away. Kind of maybe a grandparent will be like, oh, let's bang together and so it might be a toy thing, like a childhood nursery thing. So they've probably got like little nippers around with that kind of stuff. So seeing the adult version might be a little bit for them. Oh, I'm going back to when I was at school, when I was showing this when I was a kid. Oh, I'm past that.
You
it's
might be right.
interesting.
It is.
So that's something that I'd not considered before, like in terms of like the drumming, in terms of age and whether people might have a hang up from school. So like if you're doing a workshop that encourages well-being and people feel uncomfortable to start with, like how do you overcome that in your preparation, which leads me into my next question in a second.
Preparation before the workshop, do you mean?
Like if you know that the blokes might be a little bit more reluctant and you're going to a session which is mixed, have you got any like tools and tricks you can share with us? Because there's other people who probably get the same sort of thing with their DJing workshops or their music production workshops or their dance workshops or rapping workshops or whatever.
I think firstly, if you state quite clearly in your advertising that you don't need any kind of experience in this, then that tends to put people at ease as well, because they might think, oh, African drumming. Oh, well, maybe I should know a little bit about music to do that and that. So I make it very clear that this is, I don't, I prefer it. In fact, if you've never done anything before, I don't mind if you have, and it can be useful if there's someone in the group that's done a bit of drumming before, because they'll be able to hold a rhythm and there'll be a good support for those that can't, so that's good. But at the same time, it's like, it makes no difference to me, really. I want them to come. I enjoy it when people have never done it before and they go, oh my God, wow, I've never done that before, and now I'm so into it. Even after 3 sessions, I'm thinking about buying a drum, and that happens. That's happened a lot on the courses I've been running in Yardley, which is, it's great, isn't it?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's like, it's not just for the 10 weeks that we're doing the course. Then it's like I always say, if you take up an instrument, you'll never get bored, because there's always, you're never going to know enough. You're never going to be as good as you want to be. Do you know what I mean? So there's always something to do, So it's kind of good for people in retirement as well, if they've got a bit of time on their hands and they're just.
Oh,
And
yeah,
quite
man.
often it's people that have been working, their whole lives, and they've never had any time to be creative, really. And actually, they are quite creative people. They just never had time to do it. You know what I mean? So it gives them something to get into then, and it's kind of. And the thing is, I always say to them, my workshops, I'm doing them because I'm into music and I love music, and I think it's a great thing to bring people together. But the purpose of why they're booking me in Yardley, for example, is not anything to do with music. It's about social participation, and it's about health. It's about
Yeah,
people getting out of the house after COVID, and
yeah,
about
man.
generally introducing some healthy pursuits into their everyday lives, basically. And drumming's good for that because it's so physical, and it's kind of like it builds up your strength, definitely.
Amazing.
Mm,
Big up for doing that. So my next question is, what are the things that you have to do to make sure a workshop goes well from a practitioner point of view? So I'm thinking about the things that, we have to get right before we go in there. So you
mhm,
mentioned it earlier when you said saying on the poster or the flyer, all ages, all abilities welcome, no experience with music, no musical ability required. That's really good for settling people.
mhm, definitely, because
So
it
what
makes it
helps
seem
you
as though,
ensure?
yeah, it makes it seem as though it's geared for someone like them. It's not something that they're going to have a struggle with. It's like it's from the very first mention of it. It's like, this is for beginners. This is for people who haven't done this before.
Mm.
And so that's the first thing. The second thing is having somewhere to do it. You need somewhere where you're going to be able to make a lot of noise, and you're not going to annoy everybody. These are the kind of basics you've got to get down. You've got somewhere to do it, and the other thing is, they don't need any equipment to come to it. They don't need to have a drum. They don't need to, So I'll provide all the stuff. So that's one of the sort of things that prevents people getting into things like music, isn't it? Is that they haven't got a guitar, or they've never. Do you know what I mean? It's like, are you going to go and spend money on something when you don't know how to play it? Maybe you won't in your 50s. You know what I mean? Maybe you won't in your 20s. To be fair, but it's these are the stumbling blocks, aren't they? These are the blockers that prevent people from doing certain things. It's having the knowledge to know what to do with the instrument, and having an instrument in the first place. So that's why
And
sort of, courses that just bring people into it, whether it be DJing, whether it be, drumming, graffiti, or whatever it is. It's just a starting point for people, just to turn them onto it, isn't it, in the first place, and go, you could do
mm.
this if you wanted to, and just taking those barriers away, for people, really. And I'm lucky enough to be
so
able to do that, so.
so when you work with younger people,
Mm,
how does that translate with the digital world that we're in now? So, kids can use apps and get drum machines, sample machines, and
hmm
use all sorts of different apps out there that you can
mm,
make beats on. So,
yeah.
how does that translate when you're doing your African traditional drumming
hmm
with a young group? Do they start mucking about on the electronic stuff, or?
They well, to be honest, at first, it depends on the young person. You can't just sort of say all young people this, all young, because everyone's different, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? And I remember what I was like in that age, and that I was always, you know, we were into hip hop, but we were into, because we were playing instruments, we were into the samples that hip hop was created from, and then we started getting into like listening to the original tracks that were sampled from the. Do you know what I mean? And then learning how to play them. So we was always of the mindset that it's not just everything that's new is what's good. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of good stuff leading up to where you are, and those hip hop tracks wouldn't have been made without the 70s funk tracks or whatever it is that was sampled from. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so I guess what I'm leading at is that some young people will appreciate the fact that this is an old instrument. You know, I always tell them djembe drums have been around since the 13th century. Do you know what I mean? That's quite a long time. That's 800 years.
Whoa.
Which tells you, firstly, it's old,
Whoa.
and secondly, it's good because it wouldn't be around still if you just got rid of it, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? So,
Oh,
why
mate.
would we keep doing it? You know, so it's like, you know, so trying to explain to them this is an older way of making music, and drum kits are just these drums put together for one person to play. You know what I mean? So we're bringing it back to the original idea of it being a communal activity. It's not just a one person. You know, this is about everybody having some sort of fun with it. And you know, in traditional circumstances, you know, like in a traditional African village, everyone would play a bit of drum. It wouldn't be like, oh, okay, you've got the, you would have some people that are
You're on the triangle, you're on the recorder, you're on the clarinet, you're on the woods.
But it wouldn't be a case, yeah, exactly. But you know, it wouldn't be a case of, oh, if you're going to do music, then this is your career. You know, you're going to be a musician now. It's just that everyone plays music as just a way of life. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's part of life, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just something you do when you're chilling out, and it's a good way to relax. And to the thing that people say most about my workshops is they say, I love doing this because I can't think about the rest of my life for half an hour. It puts all the stuff out, you know, because stuff plays on your mind, doesn't it? You know, and that's what goes on in people's heads. I think our lives are so busy, and so like time, like you got to be here by this time, you got to be there by that time, and it's like, you know, just to spend half an hour without thinking about any of that, it's dead hard because it's always spinning around your head. So it takes an activity like this where you've got to focus on it, and you can't do both things at once. You can't do it. You know, you can't learn how to do something for the first time and think about all the stuff that you've got to do later in the day. You know, you've got to just focus your mind on that. And the thing is that that's hard to do unless you've got something like that to do. And then once you do it, you feel better afterwards because you go, oh, I haven't been thinking about all that shit for a bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I've cleared my head a bit from it, you know, and then you can see it from another perspective. And sometimes if you're going through like bad stuff, then, you know, you need that because then when you step out of it a bit and look at it from that perspective, you can go, actually, it's not that bad, is it? It's not as bad as what I was thinking it was before. You know, these are the things that really, I think, have led people to go, I want to keep doing that. You know what I mean? Because that's good for my health. You know, that's as good as going to a meditation class, or it's as good as going to a yoga class, or it's as good as, do you know what I mean? It works the same way, you know, and that's the beauty of it, really, you know.
It's amazing to hear you talk about it because we've been friends for so long now. I don't know how long it's been now. Probably
Good
about 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good long while, mate. It is.
About 11. Got to be 11 years, something like that.
Something like that, isn't it?
But we've talked about this. Yeah, we've been talking about this stuff because we do similar work, and you've worked with me in Hip Hop Heals. I've worked with you. We do Dubgasm together. My social action fundraiser. You're one of the residents. We raise money for the local community, people in poverty, and we've done the work with the money that we've raised from the rave, and taken it to a homeless hostel, and it's sick. It was so enjoyable, and even people who were just maybe not believing in it and trying to disrupt the rhythm and stuff like that. It's still interesting to watch the dynamic around it because they also still feel a sense of power because they have autonomy and choice to do something different, which is also an interesting part of watching a group and watching the dynamics. And people have a choice about whether they want to stay or not, kind of thing. Yeah. We didn't say, oh, you got to stop drumming your own rhythm. It was like, oh, we're all here. No. We've all got space and time to make our beat. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So next question, what makes your workshop safe for you to deliver and for participants to take part? So you could separate them for you and for them if you want.
Safe as in it's
Anything you want.
it's a
Anything,
it's a
interpretation.
it's a controlled environment that I will kind of generally lead, because especially if it's people that don't know what to do, they're waiting for me to tell them what to do, basically. And so I'll explain to them, okay, well, we're going to try and do a particular rhythm, and then we'll all play. So the safety is more that they know they're in safe hands. I'm not going to put them in a scenario that's going to make them feel uncomfortable. I'm not going to say, right, okay, it's your turn to solo now, and they're going to go, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what. So it's more a case of, like, I'll do things like, because in African drumming, we'll get everyone playing a rhythm, and then we'll start putting other rhythms on top of that rhythm, And so in a traditional circumstance, you might have, amongst a group of players, you might have people that will just get a bit more busy at times. They'll just start doing stuff, and then everyone will back them up. It's like if you think of that like a jazz band or something like that, someone starts improvising, the rest of the band just kind of like support them to do it, and then everyone will take a turn doing it. Do you know what I mean? So everyone gets a go. When you're
And what
dealing
happens
with,
if that gets disrupted? What happens if that gets disrupted? Somebody sort of takes over. When you're thinking about people having a turn and not being seen or not being heard, and then their mood going down. So, that can also affect somebody's sense of safety and comfort levels, because you might be thinking, hey, that geezer's going off on one there. Like me being Animal on the drums out of the Muppets, I'd just go crazy for an hour. Yeah, and then you get frustrated. What do you do?
Well, I generally don't necessarily encourage that all the time for people just doing their own thing. It's just because if everyone's learning together, you've got to just leave little spaces for it. And what I tend to do is because people are a bit, to be honest, I have more the issue, not as though everybody wants to do that, but is that nobody wants to do that. And that I'm trying to encourage them to kind of express themselves a little bit themselves. It's more the opposite, because they're new to it. They just think, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to stand out. I just want to have a go at this. Do you know what I mean? That's more the thing.
Nerve-wracking.
That's more the thing that I have to deal with. So it's more a case of, what I'll do is I'll put people in groups of 2 and 3. So, okay, I'll go, right, we're all playing this rhythm, and then we'll have groups amongst ourselves, and then, okay, you 3 are first, then I'll play with them. Do you know what I mean? And what's good about it is there's lessons to be learned in all aspects of life with this. And that's what, if you're a thinking person like I am, and then I start to see the parallels in other aspects of life when you're doing these sorts of things. Like, one thing, if stay in your lane for a bit and let someone else do their thing, and because they can't do it unless you're the foundation for what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? And then you can swap around later on, but you've got to support each other, otherwise it's just not going to work. You can't. It's no good fighting with music, because it just sounds rubbish. You have to play together, or that's just not going to work. So some of these things
really interesting.
Some of these things are good. So in relation to the safety aspect, what I'll do is I'll get groups of 2 and 3 people, and I'll guide them through the extra bits we're going to put on top of the foundation rhythm. But what's hard for the other people is that, especially if you're new to drumming, is that if someone starts playing something different sat next to you, you get drawn into playing what they're playing accidentally. So when I say stay in your lane, it's like you've got someone next to you who's doing a different part to you. Try and tune out from it, because you're going to get drawn into playing it. And if everyone starts playing that, there's no foundation rhythm for the whole thing anyway, and it's going to fall apart. So there's some real lessons to kind of get your head round with it, really, which is at times you've just got to do a specific job, if you like, and then you'll get a chance to play the other bit when it's your turn. Do you know what I mean? So these are the things to kind of, I have to structure it that way. Otherwise it would just be a free for all, and no one would appreciate it, because it would be everyone cancelling each other out rather than supporting each other. Do you know what I mean?
That can be mirrored in life at work with your team, or in the family home when you're getting the dinner out.
Definitely.
You need one person to get the knives and forks on the table. Otherwise, when the dinner comes, you're not going to be able to eat. You need your napkin or your salt and pepper. It's like,
this is it. And I think people do. They see the parallels in their everyday life with this sort of stuff. and they realise that there's an element of, okay, it's hard to do, and sometimes it does fall apart. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, especially with a new drummer, that someone's playing something next to them, that they just get drawn into playing that. The next thing you know, everyone's playing the same thing, and it's like carnage.
It's so funny. Oh, it is funny. Running workshops is a blessing,
Yeah,
and
and
I
it's
find
hard.
it so enjoyable. And
Yeah,
it's hard. Like, you have to
yeah,
be a
yeah,
certain type of person. So I
yeah.
guess what we're looking at today, the podcast is
Mm,
exploring, what kind of person should be doing this work, because
yeah,
it's different to an arts workshop. If you're doing a
yeah.
therapeutic workshop, that's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah,
But
it
what
is.
is that ball game? So, like, there's
Right.
going to be people listening to this who are thinking, oh, I might want to get into doing some of my stuff out in the community. I'm a
Mm,
musician, or I'm a DJ, or
yeah,
I'm a rapper,
yeah,
and I might want to do some of that with the nippers or whatever.
yeah.
But if you just teach, your
Mm,
straight art, that's cool, that's
mm,
wicked. But
hmm
then there's also things that people could be bringing into the workshop, whether you
yeah.
intend it or not, where something might be stirred.
Mm,
And then
hmm
there's a separate whole thing to go in intentionally,
mm,
wanting for a shift, wanting for transformation,
yeah,
wanting to support people safely so that they can process stuff emotionally. And that's
yeah.
where we're looking at. What do you do for safe practice for your part in that realm? If
Safe.
somebody's bringing up messy stuff with them, and
Oh, yeah. That's actually that's a good point. In that you try to. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you want people to chat a little bit beforehand. You don't want it to be so, right, we're here to work. You want everyone to just have a conversation, and people will say stuff. I mean, I had a thing the other week when it was a coronation and all that, going on. And fortunately, most people had a similar opinion about the coronation in the thing, But I was thinking at times, hmm, this isn't, I'm not, although everything we do is political in a sense, I'm not trying, this workshop's not about the coronation. It's not about like the royal family, and it's not about all these other things. Fortunately, everybody had a similar sort of like kind of not really bothered about it, don't really like the royal family sort of spin on it. But I did think to myself at the time, you've got to be careful here, because there might be someone that's really offended, do you know what I mean, by that kind of chat. And that would be the same as if someone just started going into some, deep problems they've got going on, or they've got some real stuff going on. It's not necessarily the right environment to be airing that kind of stuff. Just, I don't know, you have to be careful, I think. Do you know what I mean? Is that you want it
mm,
to be, you want everyone to get something out of it, and you don't want to stifle people, but at the same time, you don't want them to do everyone else's head in, basically.
yeah, yeah.
You want it to be something that everybody comes away from going, that was a really positive experience, not like, oh, I'm not going there because that person's going to go on about this, or this person's going to say that, or, it's, I think a lot of it comes down to the workshop leader trying and steer things in the right direction. Yeah, and I'm sure you're adept at doing this as well, because you do come across situations where you're like, this is going the wrong way. Like, I need to kind of smooth this out, But the safety aspects comes in that I will always step in. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to let an argument
Mm,
take place. Do you know what I mean? For example, no way. I would
mm.
just, I'll spot it early, and I'll be like, look, we're not here to talk about that, really, are we? Do you know what I mean? And everyone's opinions on, we say things like, we're never all going to agree on everything, are we? Do you know what I mean? Because we're not, are we? So there's no point pretending that we should all have the same opinion about a specific topic. That doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Quite often we've all come from, I've people from all different, living in Birmingham, you've got people from all different backgrounds, haven't you? All different
All different. Yeah.
customs and faiths and all the rest of it. And so, you know, that that helps, because people are generally a bit more tolerant around here, I think. Do you know what I mean? And they're aware that other people have got stuff going on that they don't know about, and they don't. Do you know what I mean? And so they don't need to know about it if they don't want to. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Mm.
there's a level of tolerance where people are adept to knowing, like, okay, well, this person's from, from this background, and they're going to have it from this perspective, and but you learn from that, don't you, as well? That's the thing. When someone says something, you often go, oh, I never looked at it like that before. You know what I mean? So, but the safety aspect comes in just I won't let things get out of hand at all. try and keep to the script, because usually we haven't got that much time anyway. So, these sort of pleasantries and the little conversations we have are necessary, because unless you know a little bit about the person you're working with or whatever, it's a bit weird anyway, isn't it? You know what I mean? You need to kind of have a chat beforehand, not just get into it, like, you know what I mean? But in terms of safety, and in terms of other aspects of safety, there's no electrics used in my workshops. It's all acoustic. So we haven't got any of those issues. No one's going to, break any equipment, for example, or they're not going to drop any, stuff like that. If you're working with computers, things can go awry. You haven't got anyone on the internet. You haven't got any of that kind of stuff going on. So it narrows it down a lot, really. It's just us and the drums, and that's it,
Your heaven, isn't it, Damo? Your heaven, Bongo, Damo, and the drums. Daily
Keep it
report back from
simple,
Birmingham. Yeah. Bongo Damo loves drums and he works with them every day. Yes. Right, so what external factors could help you deliver a good therapeutic hip-hop workshop? And that word hip-hop is interchangeable, as we say, with the drums. The drums are a foundational part of hip-hop. African drumming's a foundational part of reggae
Definitely.
and hip-hop and
That's right,
whatever.
that's right.
So
exactly. So
yeah.
So what was the question again? Sorry, was it?
Yeah, what are the external things, outside things from you that could help you deliver a good therapeutic workshop? So things like, the organisation you're working with, them having an understanding about how it works, or like money, good space, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've having a place that we can go to that everybody can get to is really a key thing. Because the workshop I'm doing at the moment, it's like I'm doing it in St Giles's Church in Sheldon, and it's a little bit out of the way, I've found, compared to the last place I did it, which was the Acox Green Library, which is a bit more central. So the numbers haven't been as much this time, and I think that's partly the reason to do it. And it's a little bit, those that really want to do it will always make the effort, but those that are kind of like umming and ahhing about it a little bit will be put off by those sorts of things in the end. Like they might do a few weeks, and after a bit they're like, go all the way down there. I've got to get 2 buses there. Do you know what I mean? It can wear you thin a little bit, So that's one thing.
Yeah. So having the venue by like where they're going to be going anyway, where the people are. So like on the local high street, or in like an area next to a busy supermarket or something where people are passing through, or really if it's helps. A social prescription thing, like at the doctor's surgery or something, so they're there anyway, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. That really does help. I think trying to create a nice vibe that people enjoy. I always bring tea and biscuits. I always bring. I don't make them work too hard. I don't want it to be like a strict musical. Right, we've got to get this right, or we've ruined this. It's not. It's supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be good for your health. Do you know what I mean? Before any of the music comes into it, so it's just bearing in mind those, not getting caught up in the. In some of the stuff that you're doing, in the content that you're doing. I'm sure you can appreciate that from doing poetry workshops and stuff like that. Is that sometimes you might think, well, the poems aren't the greatest today, but the people that have been doing it have really got something out of it. Do you know what I mean? And like, what they're creating is secondary to the experience they're having while they're doing it. Do you know what I mean? I think that's really the key thing. And so keeping those priorities in your mind is something that I constantly have to check myself on, just because I'm also a musician, and I know how good it can sound. Do you know what I mean? But I have to, at times you just go, yeah, but they're not going to play it like that. So just get back in your box, Wilding. Do you know what I mean? Just bearing these things in mind, I think, are really the key to doing it, because I've been to a lot of workshops before. And sometimes it can get carried away with getting it all, and it just, unless you're really into it, you're not going to take shit from anyone. Do you know what I mean? Like, unless you really respect them and you're like, I really want to learn this. But not everyone's got that mindset, and that's not what my workshops are about. My workshops are about introducing people to this thing, and I want them to leave going, I want them to leave knowing a bit more about the drums, knowing a bit more about the culture, and having a go and going, oh, that was quite good fun. You know what I mean? And anything more than that is obviously amazing. You know what I mean? But that's kind of what I'm really trying to get from everybody. You're obviously going to get the odd
Mm.
few that take it to another level and they go, where's this been all my life? I need to do more of this. You know what I mean? And that's amazing, you know, but most people will come away from it going, I really enjoyed that. We did a performance. I've got a video of it, you know, and then I'll show that to my family members. I'll show it to my mates, you know. That's what it's about, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that. So even having opportunities for people to film and asking the
hmm
question, you know,
hmm
do you want to video yourself, or we can
Yeah,
film you, or like an external
definitely.
factor could be just having like a permission form where you can
Yeah, yeah,
say
yeah.
like, oh,
You
we
have to
might
do all
put
that.
this film out. Yeah.
You
And then
definitely
that
have to
can
do
help
that
to.
because not everyone is up for it. You know, it's true. It's always a funny one that because I don't because there's what generally happens is that most people will be up for it, and then you get one or two people who are a bit like don't really want to be filmed. You know, but there's a bit of a peer pressure thing going on at that moment where everybody, you know, that those that don't mind are kind of a bit like, you know, but it's fair enough. You know what I mean? If you don't want to be filmed, you don't want to be filmed. You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of being able to film everybody else and not the people that don't want to. You know, so I always have those
Yes.
forms. I always do that because
It,
that's you can't just film people.
yeah.
I
It's
sat
a
at home
funny
watching them. You know?
dynamic. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
funny dynamic with a drum thing because it's not like you can just say, "Okay, you step out and go and stand over there," because the sound of the beat's going to be
yeah.
different, isn't it? So you
You
have to
just film
angle
the
the
back of you just film the
camera.
back of the heads. Yeah, that's what you do. Just kind of miss out the faces really, and then they're okay about it really. You know, because they're aware that
Yeah,
other people want that facility as well. You know, so it's quite good.
yeah.
Um,
I
so in
like the
terms of
hand shot. I like the
yeah,
shot of the hands,
yeah,
like making and doing stuff. It looks wicked when you're doing your promo pictures or whatever, or
hmm
your feedback report, and you put a photo of people, and it's just the hands on the table with all the
yeah,
drums or the
yeah,
art
yeah, yeah.
stuff or writing. It's sick.
That's really good.
So
So in
we
terms of was the question about getting things right before what things need to be?
Yeah, like external things.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Will the advertising getting them in the right places? I have a tendency to go for a mixture of paper flyers still and online advertising. You know,
we're
um,
veering a little bit off now because I'm thinking about things that help it be a therapeutic workshop rather than just
right,
like a standard workshop. So,
got you.
how would the advertising help with the well-being side? Like, would you
Uh,
say, for
well,
example,
I would say on most of my flyers would say things like it would just have a few. I used to for the ones even for the ones I used to do in King's Heath, I used to have like a rundown of some positive health benefits.
yeah,
Like,
wicked,
do you know what I mean? Like just little things like help lower your blood pressure, which drumming does.
amazing, yeah,
You know,
wicked,
just a few just sort of like key things.
like key
You know,
benefits on the
yeah,
poster.
exactly. Recenter yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, like do something in the
That's sick.
moment. These sorts of things where it's kind of like that. Even that people that aren't into music, they'll relate to that, won't they? They'll go, actually, I could do with a bit of that. You know, that sounds good. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
so that's one way. To try and get
excellent. Top tip, Damo.
yeah
That's a
top
good
tips.
reminder to me as well, man. Thank you.
Hmm.
Right, we're moving into the last part now. So,
Yeah.
um, this next question is about barriers. So,
Hmm.
what might stop you from offering a good therapeutic hip hop workshop?
Hmm. Um, People not thinking they can do it in the first place. People that are convinced that they've got no rhythm. This is often the line that I get fed, which is that I've got no rhythm, and you just think to yourself, but you've never done it. You've never actually done it, so how do you know? You know what I mean? You just convinced
Yeah.
yourself that you're no good at it because maybe once you had to go on a drum for 3 seconds and thought, oh, I can't play it properly. It's like, well, why would you be able to play it properly? Do you think I did when I
Yeah.
first had to go with a drum? No, I didn't. It's like it's all talent is what 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. They say, don't they? So it's like,
Yeah.
and unless you feel as though it's something you could do, you won't even give it a second thought. It's just not on your radar. Like you just be like, that's nice. It's not for me though, because I'm not that kind of person. Do you know what I mean? These are the sorts
How
of
do you
things
deal with that?
well, it's trying
How do you
to
deal with that?
break down that sort of idea, isn't it? And it's hard to deal with it unless you actually meet the person that's going through that. So um, I'll that's what this is going back to what we said before about, like, I've found that there's a lot more women that seem to be open to doing these sorts of things, and it's harder with blokes to try and break down some of these barriers. Whether it's an ego thing, whether it's just, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? But like, it seems a lot easier. I found it a lot easier with women to them just to give things a go. Just generally, just give something a go. You know, I'll give it a go. Give it an hour. See what happens. You know, a lot of blokes would be more like to make their mind up before then and go, nah, it's not for me. That's not my thing. You know. So these are the difficulties, aren't they? Breaking down those barriers are, again, in terms of, if I'm putting a workshop on and I'm not really speaking to any of the people who are going to be there, all right, let's do it in two parts. Firstly, if I am speaking to the people who are going to be there, for example, if I went into a centre, or I was going to do a workshop in a centre or something like that, and they might say to me, why don't you come down the week before and have a chat to people? Yeah, just come down. We'll advertise it in the place. I think it'll be a good thing, but it'd be a good idea if you came down. So I'll just turn up with a drum and just go, all right, okay, I'm going to be doing this over the next few weeks. If anyone fancies getting involved, I'll play them something, you know, and I'll say, I'll show you how to do that in 2 weeks' time. Do you know what I mean? And I guarantee you'll all be able to do it, you know, and I pretty much can. Do you know what I mean? Because I'll play something that sounds great, but it's not that hard. Do you know what I mean? But it is, if you've never heard it before, you'd be like, whoa, what's that? You know? So try and tantalize them a little bit with actually what you're going to be doing. And then speak to them. Like, what questions have you got about this? Or say, is anyone fancy doing this? Can I have a show of hands? If like one hand goes up, I'll be like, right, okay, what's the matter?
That's amazing. Yeah, so you can ask what the barriers are directly by attending. So do you build that into your cost program? The program cost.
I should do, but more often than not, I'm more thinking about like, okay, well, I'll do it for free because I want the workshop to go ahead. And usually I won't be there that long. Do you know what I mean? It'd probably be like an hour and a half out of my day, which, yeah, it should be costed in really. But to be honest, I generally, you know, but some things are costed in. I usually cost in flyer runs and doing internet stuff and that. Like, I might pay myself an hour or two extra pay just to cover that. You know, like anyone that, for example, if you were looking to do a run of therapeutic workshops in some sort of centre, whether it be a community centre or whatever it is, going in there beforehand and just giving a little sort of flash of what it is you're going to be doing can demystify it for people as well, because they might not really know what you're on about. You know what I mean? African drumming. You know, if I turn up with the drum and go, that's an African drum, here we go, I'll play it. And then you know exactly what you're dealing with, and I can say, it doesn't matter if you've done it before. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not expecting you to know anything about this, you know. And you don't have to sign up for 10 weeks as well. That's the other thing, is that puts people off too. You know, like, because I run a 10-week course, people think, bloody hell, 10 weeks. It's a bit of an undertaking, isn't it? But you just got to say to them, there's no compulsion to come for 10 weeks. You know what I mean? I'm running it for 10 weeks. Come for a week. If you don't like it, it's supposed to be beneficial to you. If you don't want to do it, you know what I mean? I'm not going to make you do it.
Yeah. It's funny because having these chats, you realise some things that are so normal and natural. And I didn't think about what you were saying about popping in earlier and then giving that little taster as something to talk about here as a way to overcome barriers. But because we're framing it in the context of this podcast, we both do it anyway. But just having the conversation, I've just started to get a light bulb moment. And then hopefully for the audience that are listening to this, there'll be people who don't think of it as that will have their sparks flying in their brains like me. And then there's other people who are new or trainees or never done this. And we want people to do this kind of stuff. And we want people to do it better than we can by sharing what we've done and passing the baton on. You know what I mean? So, like, just thinking back to when you first started this work, can you tell us one or two things that would have helped you measure the impact of your work better or more easily? So going back to the beginning, knowing what you know now, what are a couple of big things that you'd tell yourself in the past, like?
It's a good question.
Measuring the impact.
Yeah. I think from what I've learned now, that the impact can be measured right sort of directly in terms of people telling you, like, this is really helped me, like, that does happen. But also, it's not just it's about the impact it has on their general life, rather than whether or not they want to pursue, like, for example, hip hop, or whether they want to pursue African drumming, or whether they want to. It's more about what they've gone through, which then helps them be perhaps a bit more of a social person, maybe, or it might give them the confidence to go and do other things. I think that's part of the impact as well. I'm not necessarily looking for anyone that does my workshops to get into the drums massively. Do you know what I mean? It's more about them doing something that then gives them the sort of oomph to go and do other things as well.
So let me ask you this. How do you capture that? If somebody's telling you how it's benefited their lives, how do you record it and take it on?
I do, like for the last one, I did a couple of videos from people because they told me during the workshops a couple of things. Firstly, the one guy, his wife had passed away about 6 months beforehand, and the guy was in his 80s, but he was still dead active, and he was like, I still want to do stuff. And this was the first thing he'd done since his wife passed away. And so I was like, and I didn't know any of this, you know what I mean? He just, at the end of the sessions, he just told me, and he was just like, he was made up with the fact that it really did kind of snap him out of a load of shit. Do you know what I mean? And he was like, right, I want to do stuff now. I want to get back on with my life, like, and I was like, it's fucking mega. So I just said, well, if you can, if I can record you saying that, mate, that helps us get more money to do more of this. You know what I mean? So
with another person who might be lonely.
Exactly.
Somebody's lost their spouse. Like, sadly, my mum and dad died 10 years apart. My mum was devastated, absolutely ruined. Like, it was actually 13 years apart. She was lost.
Yeah, man.
She was like a shadow of their former self. So, like, I'm with my husband now, who you know well.
Yeah,
and, like,
exactly.
He's had you knew me before and after I got married to him. I was pretty, bold, big, bubbly. Now I've met him. It's like a dynamic duo. We're like the similar energy in that. Like, you can see the match.
That's the thing, isn't it? And then so to lose that, 30 years down the line, it's like, where do you go? Innit, So the guy was made up in terms of like the fact that he only realised how depressed he was until he started doing something. Do you know what I mean? It's as simple as that.
Wow.
You just get into a headspace where you just, And then there's another woman who had a physical. Interestingly enough, when she first started, she said, "Oh, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this because I've got a bad wrist," And I said, "Well, just don't stop if it's hurting. Do you know what I mean? I'm not here to hurt you, But she said that it got better. It strengthened the wrist. Like, through doing it, a lot of the pain went at night and all that. And I was like, great. Let's get that recorded.
Wicked, Damo. Yeah. So do you stand there and ask them to film themselves, or how do you make it so it's comfortable? Do you film them?
Film them and make it. I think if you level with people and tell them, look, this is not. No one's going to watch this. This is not going on the internet. Trust me enough to know that I'm only going to use this. The only other people that are going to see this is the people that are paying for this course. That's it. So that's one thing, is that, letting them know that they're not going to be exposed. Yeah,
that's a good tip, man. Yeah, that's a really good tip. So they're sure about what the video is for,
and do it on their own as well. Don't do it in front of other people. So I went up to them individually after the workshop had finished and just said, like, can I, what you were saying in there was mega. So can we? Yeah, exactly. It's not about singling people out, is it? And it's not, it's not about that at all. It's just that we know what the funders are looking for, what they want to see in terms of what they're going to give them, because they haven't got, they've got so much money. They're only going to give it to the things that are working, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's a case of showing them that it does work, because I know that it does. So it's just a matter of demonstrating that in the way that they want it to be demonstrated, basically.
So you've made me think about something. There's loads of things that I see working right? And in my head, all the way through the workshop, I'm thinking, tick, that goes well. Oh, that person's doing well there. Oh, I can see a difference there. Because you're in the live workshop, it's hard to capture this stuff in the moment. And then by the time the end's happened, it's like there's 20 things that you've clocked, but because you're juggling what the person on the right's doing with their thing, and then on the left-hand side, somebody's waiting for the instruction because they didn't get it. They need you to come and repeat the instruction. Oh, and in the meantime, somebody else has finished. And then in the moment, for us as practitioners, what could we do? What do you do in the moment where you're like, oh, I need to make sure I tell that to the organizer or the commissioner or the funder after, so that they can keep doing this in the future? Like, have you got any tips for that?
Take notes directly as soon as you finish the workshop.
In the workshop?
No, after the workshop, because you can't, as you say, it's impossible to just stop doing the workshop. But if you know that at the end of every workshop you're going to spend 10 minutes writing a load of notes, then you're going to be looking for things in that workshop to write down, aren't you, at the end of it? So just having that in your mind, I think, and then at the end of it, make yourself a few notes. They did this week. They really came out of the shell to do this, and like someone got on the dum-dums for the first time, and or whatever it is, what I mean? It's like, oh, they've tried this for the first time. Just get that stuff down, because you forget it as soon as you've left. You do.
Yeah, immediate debrief with the staff as well. I find that handy. I made sure that I did my reflection on what happened, like you said, but then I planned the next workshop because I could see what the follow-on activity would be in the moment. But once you go home and you have a shower, breakfast, next day comes, it's like, oh.
You forget, don't you?
So I'd plan the next one. I'd debrief the staff, and I'd make sure the notes were there, and I'd get the materials ready. Then the next week, I had that blocked off in my mind. In my mind's compartment, for my safety, I was secure that I'd done that in an effective way. So I was free, and I was myself, and I was back to being centered Kizzy, and I didn't have to carry the weight of worrying about high risk participants who could come. Like, literally, they were telling me stuff like, and I'm going to give a trigger warning. I'm just saying these words purely for the benefit of the audience to understand what can happen when you do go into certain high risk situations. So they're talking about a parent being murdered, raped, and then hacked up. Talking about being abused by, a parental figure. Talking about being in prison all their lives and being on crack and smack and cross-dressing, and then getting, obviously, a battering in prison or whatever because of the gender identity and all that kind of stuff. Never leaving prison, just constantly on a cycle. All this kind of stuff is heavy, man. So for your safety, if you're in an environment like that, you've got to be clear, centered, and available. So the last thing you want is thinking, oh, this activity's run out, I've got 10 minutes spare. Because then all chaos can ensue for you and for the participants. And if you lose them, they're not going to trust you, because they'll see that you're not part of the game.
On top of it all, absolutely.
Yeah, you're not a leader. They're looking at you to take initiative and to direct. I think that's key for a group to know that you're in charge. And if something goes well, or if something goes badly, or if someone needs to step in, they need to feel comfortable that you are in that position. And part of that is that you're not bumbling around with paperwork thinking, what was I going to do next? Or how does that activity, how does that activity work better now I've tried it and it's flopped? I need to think in the moment a better way to do this, because they don't get it. So if you do all that kind of business beforehand, it takes a massive weight off your shoulder, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Okay. Have you got anything to add to that before we move on?
No, that's cool. Making people feel safe is the number one priority, really, isn't it? They should be enjoying themselves and feeling as though, oh, this is a worthwhile activity that I'm engaging in.
Big ups, Damo. Thank you.
Nice one.
Okay, last couple of questions now. So, what guidance do you wish you had before starting to help you improve your evaluation skills? So, imagine you had like a mentor giving you a heads up.
Yeah. I think
if you were going to go back in time and say to baby Damo,
right,
hey,
what would you
when
do?
You're evaluating, you could do this instead. Like,
I think just the evaluation is not, well, first thing for me would be, it's not just all musical. That would be what I tell my younger self. That it's like, just the fact that they're playing music great is not necessarily an indication that the other boxes are being ticked. You know, they're like the health stuff and the social participation to a certain extent, but it's not the music is just the start. That would be the first thing I say to them, is that what we're doing here, you know, the music is just the beginning of that. Really, what you're trying to achieve for these people is you want them to, like, you know, deal with the stuff they're dealing with, you know what I mean? And hopefully this will help that, you know. So that's the first thing. I think that evaluating it is, it's difficult in the really, if you're being honest, like, it's obvious for some people that it's worked for them. You know, it's not as obvious for others until a bit later, actually. You know, it's when they start to, you know, they might think, oh yeah, it was cool. And because some people don't say much either. You know, you might say, how did you find the workshops? Yeah, it was good. That's what they'll say. You know what I mean? Like, they won't,
Yeah.
they won't,
It's all
they
right,
won't,
yeah.
yeah, they won't elaborate on it. Yeah, do you know what I mean? They'll just say, yeah, it was cool. You know, and you're like, huh. Okay, do you want to say a bit more? But they might not, you know what I mean? So the only way that, like, you'd really find out whether or not it worked for them would be to, you know, to stay in contact with them afterwards, and then ask them again, or speak to them again more
Good
casually.
idea, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? A bit later on, and see, like, okay, what's been going on with your life since then? And they might go, oh yeah, I've been going to this other club now. This started up around the corner, you know. And then you can start to see, like, okay, you know what I mean? That someone's actually stepping out of the situation they were in, and now they're in a kind of different headspace, you know. And that's one thing you could say as well. Like, you know, evaluation is quite tricky, but if someone continually turns up to a 10-week course every week, then you're doing something right. Do you know what I mean? Because they wouldn't bother after a few weeks, you know. And if someone is then sort of talking to you about music, talking to you about drums, talking to you about different things they can do to calm themselves down in their life, you know, the more this sort of like meditative sort of stuff, like, then you know, you're looking along a good line then, aren't you? You know, so evaluation is difficult, but just the doing of it in itself is indicates something. Do you know what I mean? If you do it over a long period of time, it definitely indicates that they've got a connection with it, with this, or with you, or with the whole thing, you know. So
so you can look at your attendance figures as a part of your evaluation and say,
definitely,
look, it's successful because 90% of the sessions were full attendance or whatever, and that can be a piece of your data to feedback, which is valuable.
And if someone, you know, and in terms of, if someone's been spending 2 hours a week, which is what the sessions I'm doing at the moment, 2 hours a week doing a healthy pursuit, then it's more than they were doing beforehand, potentially. Do you know what I mean? So at least they've got that in their diary now. Once a week I do this, and do you know what I mean? And like, they start to build up. They start to see that when it's not there anymore, they start to miss it. That's what happens as well. I get people emailing me weeks after going, oh, I was loving the drumming, now I've got nowhere to do it now, and all this sorts of stuff. You know what I mean? And like, you know. So you can see from that.
Also something to capture for the funders, isn't it? I think
it is.
After, you know, but it's hard to remember all these things, isn't it? Like,
it is.
Would you say that it was a good idea, looking at this objectively, if we were going to be setting up a way to evaluate, or we're going to do a project, would you direct the funder, like the organisation, the host organisation, to contact the participants afterwards and say, oh yeah, what's going on? How's it going? Like, and have that informal chat? Or do you think it's better coming from you?
I think that it's better coming from me.
That's good. Interesting. Why?
Because they've got a connection with me with the course.
Yeah, wicked.
I think that they'll probably be a bit more open to me, really.
Yeah, no, that's sound, man.
I think if it's a funder, they'll probably, well, you know, I'll probably get more of an honest answer. That's for sure. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're talking to a funder, they'll go into like, okay, Damo wants me to say this, so I'll say this.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'd probably get more of an honest answer if you know, like, you know, so. But either's good. You know what I mean? Because you've got to try things, haven't you? And sometimes, you know, things just work as they do. So I mean, I'm not saying that if there isn't a situation where if someone did, like one of the funders went to one of my sort of clients and said, like, how did you find it? They'd probably get, it's worth doing, still worth doing. Do you know what I mean? But I think that they probably get a better answer from me, I think,
Yeah, I hear you. It depends on your relationship and the circumstance, I guess, doesn't it?
does.
Like a lot of this stuff.
It does.
So, final question. It's a quick fire one, and it's what would a job description look like for your job in therapeutic hip hop? So, if you were looking at the person spec and advertising for your job, what 5 qualities on the person spec would you need?
Okay. Patience. You need to be able to, be patient with people. You need to be looking to help people. Really, that should be something that's part of your reason for doing it, is that you're trying to assist other people. Knowing enough about the subject to be able to deliver it. I think that's definitely important, isn't it? You've got to be, you're well into hip hop, so you're the best person for, to a certain extent. But you know what I mean? It's having a real passion for the subject, I think, makes it. They see the enthusiasm that you have for it, and then they buzz off that. Do you know what I mean? Because they probably not, they might not know much about it. But if I'm going, this is wicked, they'll be like, oh, okay. If I'm just bored about it, and it's like, they're going to be like, well, this is rubbish, isn't it? So that's definitely part of it. Being able to, let's think. All right, so we've got, what was the first one we had? It
was about patience, about listening, about wanting to help people, about having enthusiasm for your subject.
Yeah, wanting to do something useful in your local community, I think, is another. Having that drive to be able to want to do that. And the last thing would be to not, the person should not have too many hang-ups about various other people and things like that. They should be able to get on with the majority of people, really. I think you've got to accept that, if that anyone can come to your workshop, then expect anyone to come to your workshop, if you're doing, don't be freaked out. Like if you're doing a workshop that's supposed to be helping people with, mental health issues, then expect people with mental health issues to turn up and be able to deal with that. Do you know what I mean? So don't put yourself in a scenario that you're not going to be able to handle, because and to a certain extent you might not know that until you do it, but you'll soon know it. Do you know what I mean? And so it's a case of being able to just navigate that sort of thing and expect surprises.
I love watching, because it's like a gift that you unwrap.
Yeah.
And then over the course of the workshops, it's like pasta parcel. You open up the layers and you're like, oh, that person's that layer, that person's that, or this person's changing now. We've peeled back a little bit, and the creativity is really a route. Yeah, it's a route to peel back the layers. Never thought about that. But
that's a really good analogy. Yeah, I like that. Wicked.
Well, it's been absolutely sick talking to you. This is Chamber 33.
Nice to see you.
Bongo Damo, a pleasure. You're an absolute G, and I wish
thanks
you
for having me.
all the best. Yeah, I wish you all the best with your work. Sounds sick, and hopefully, if there's any material from this podcast that you can use for your own funders or whatever, you'll have a recording, and you can use any of it for any kind of promo or whatever. And
brilliant.
Thanks for coming on. And listeners, go out there and try things. Use the messages in the podcast to do things and experiment and do it safely. Look after yourself, give yourself space, and we'll see you next time for Chamber 34.
Nice one. See you, mate. Nice one. See you soon.